G'day! Before I start this week's reality check, I thought I should tell you about a new project NewsNation's been working on. It's called Off-Road Confidential, and it's a collaboration between this network and Visit California. Hosted by Gabriel Ornelas, it's a journey of food, drink, and adventure across Northern California. More details in the box below, or you can watch our News Nation YouTube channel where Gabriel will be joining me as a neighbour. Here's a sneak peek.
I'm Gabriel Ornelas. Join me as we explore Northern California. I felt like this was an opportunity to rediscover a unique place that really has everything for everyone. There's so much to explore. There's so much to discover. It's so rich in culture. We wanted to highlight some local artisans. We're going Off-Road Confidential, only on NewsNation.
Off-Road Confidential, Saturday at 5:30 Eastern on NewsNation.
G'day, welcome back. I'm Ross Coulthart and I've got Alex Bush with me, and it's that time of the week again to do the Q&As because all of you have so many questions you'd like answered. I can't guarantee I can always give you a straight answer, but we'll give it a go. Fire away, Alex.
Hi, Ross. A lot of people this week commenting on your recent Telepathy Tapes episode. Many people said that they were moved to tears. I'm really thankful that you are looking into this. One person from YouTube wants to know how you got in contact with the doctor, how you knew about her, all of that information.
Well, I hope the tears were happy tears. I found the whole story of the telepathy tapes that was produced by a wonderful reporter called Kai Dickens with the assistance of Diane Hennessy Powell. I found it fascinating, and indeed I found it very moving as well. That's how I found Diane. I was fascinated to listen, and I really recommend to everybody the Telepathy Tapes podcast. It is one of the most profound pieces of journalism I've heard in many years. Full marks to Kai Dickens for taking on, a bit like UAPs, a very confronting subject that a lot of people poo-poo, namely psychic phenomena, telepathy, and for essentially assessing the merits of claims that there might be some scientific basis to it. I'm really struck by the fact that it's an act of courage for a filmmaker and indeed for an academic like Diane to stick their heads up and associate themselves with claims like this. All of us have got grannies or aunties or uncles or fathers who've claimed at different times premonitions, psychic phenomena, intuition. And I think science is skirting around the subject in a way that is intriguing. And the telepathy tapes, to me, represents a really interesting attempt to engage with something that I think might suggest that human consciousness is intrinsic, not just to an understanding of ideas of telepathy, but also probably to ideas about UAPs. I think that covers the questions, Alex, but please make sure I'm picked up if there's something I've missed.
No, I think we have a few more on that telepathy tape subject. Louis from YouTube asks, I want to know if the children can teach us to do this. Have they been asked?
Some people claim that all human beings have these innate skills, which of course the debunkers, the scientists would scoff at, or some scientists. I'd like to see it proven. I'd love to see a controlled scientific experiment to see whether it's possible to teach this kind of phenomena. And one of the things that intrigues me is that, a bit like the UAP subject, there's been a real attempt to shut down Kai and Diane from doing their investigative work. They're legitimately investigating an area of science that has been overlooked because it's been stigmatized and treated with taboo. Frankly, we won't know unless we ask the question. We won't know unless the scientific question is asked. And I think it's legitimate to test that. And there are people who've told me that it is possible for all human beings to have these abilities, but that in these autistic kids, particularly the non-verbal kids, they've got these enhanced skills that they've developed because of the other issues that they have with their autism. So, maybe the fact of the autism is something that has, if you like, compelled them to develop these communications. I found it terribly moving when I was listening to the telepathy tapes that kids who had been dismissed as not very intelligent and subnormal, if you like, in their levels of intelligence, were in fact incredibly intelligent, and that they had allegedly, and I say again, allegedly been exchanging information with each other telepathically in order to teach each other about things like history and science. And it's such a sad thing, if true, that science, because of its dogmaticism, which is not what science is meant to demonstrate, has basically not allowed these kids to be discovered and fulfilled before. And this is what journalism's all about. It's all about cutting at the edge of ideas and pushing ideas. And sometimes that's confronting for people, but it shouldn't be. I mean, if it can be disproved, disprove it. If it can be proven, wow, what a new era in human consciousness that would be.
Another viewer from YouTube says, Ross, in the Telepathy Tapes episode, you mentioned a mediumship experience with a psionic asset, which you said rocked your world, freaked you out. Could you elaborate more on that experience?
Oh, look, it's a fair question. It's too personal for me to talk about. It was actually a message from my dad, who's passed. And it was something that he said that just completely blew me away because it was so obviously the sort of thing that he would say. And I'm aware that the person asking the question has asked, is it possible that the psychic read my mind? And maybe that's the explanation for the alleged communication. And maybe it is. I mean, we just don't know. I mean, I'm not the expert on how this is done or whether it's really communication with people who have passed. What I will tell you, though, is that as I get more and more into the subject of UAPs being linked to human consciousness and more into this subject of psychics, psionics, telepathy, and that link to human consciousness, the idea of a non-local human consciousness, essentially the Christian idea of a soul, becomes more and more plausible. The idea that our bodies are merely vessels for our consciousness and that we're having an experience in these bodies at the time that we're in them. But is it possible that our consciousness is non-local and that once we have completed our task on this planet, we go to whatever the broader uber consciousness is? I have no idea, and I don't pretend to be an expert on it. I am able to say, though, that I'm going to be attending a conference on consciousness in Spain later this year, I think in July, and I'm going to be meeting up with Stu Hameroff, who I hope to get on Reality Check very soon, who's an expert on this idea that the human brain is not necessarily the origin of human consciousness, and that what we have in our brain are things called microtubules, and that they might provide a scientific explanation for how the human brain could engage with an uber consciousness, an external non-local consciousness.
Last time we did a Q&A, we talked about Elon Musk and his comments on Joe Rogan's podcast. He talked about Lockheed Martin and how he would be read in if things were actually happening. And you basically said last time that you did not believe what he said. We have Jerry from email asking us, do you think that there maybe is just different levels of being read in?
I would be really surprised, based on what I've been told by my sources, if Elon Musk has not been read in as the principal of SpaceX to the reality of NHI engagement with this planet. I mean, I know it, to a lot of people, they might scoff and say, oh, well, it's all a load of cobblers because the Pentagon officially denies that there is any NHI alien engagement with this planet. But frankly, I'm sorry, I just don't believe that. I think the Pentagon is lying. And I think that what's happening is there has been a decision made by the people in power, for reasons that I do not yet understand, to not reveal this extraordinary secret to the public. I'm told that there is no good reason for not revealing that simple fact, the fact of NHI engagement with this planet. And I'm told by very reliable sources that Elon Musk has been read in. Now, what that means exactly, that's a good question. Has he been read into the existence of a reverse engineering program? Look, there are claims that have been put to me that he has, that he's aware of recovered non-human technology. I have to concede, a journo is only ever as good as their sources. The reason I'm very confident that Elon Musk has been read in to at least some aspects of the program, and that involves claims that we are not only engaging with NHI, but that technology has been recovered, NHI technology has been recovered, is because I've heard that from multiple sources in the intelligence and defence establishment, people who would know, people within the legacy program. Why would he lie about it if that's the case? Well, under the read-in obligations of anyone who's read in to national security classified secrets, you are legally obliged to lie. In fact, I've had one conversation with one person recently, not Elon Musk, who's told me that if they were called to Congress, they would regard themselves as being under a legal obligation to lie about what they know about the legacy program, which really does beg the question, what is the law that is regulating the secrecy pertaining to the alleged legacy NHI retrieval program? And I'm told that that law is sourced to a 1950s, probably 1954 Eisenhower presidential, or PEAD, Presidential Executive Action Directive, I think it's called. And these are essentially orders made in secret by the president, which essentially are executive orders enshrined with the power of the president. Would that be able to circumvent Congress? That's an interesting question. Legal scholars, I'm an attorney by training and I do not purport to be a constitutional lawyer. Legal scholars tell me that it would not be viable for any president or anybody in government to claim that they can circumvent congressional oversight if taxpayers' money is being spent, as I'm told it is, on these projects. It's not something that can legitimately be kept secret from the public. To that extent, though, Elon would be quite patriotic and doing the obligations that he's obliged to do if he did lie about it. And frankly, I don't find it plausible that somebody in SpaceX who is flying constantly into space with rockets with cameras and other sensor systems wouldn't be aware of what other sources have told me they've seen on defense satellites. I'm told that NASA, or there are people in NASA who are fully aware of non-human intelligence technology operating in and around the planet. I know that sounds crazy, and I know a lot of people might roll their eyes and go, oh, this is a load of nonsense. But just keep an open mind, because I do think that there are people in government that think there are legitimate reasons for keeping this secret, and that would impose an obligation on somebody like Elon if he has been read in. It's not suggesting that he's doing it for any nefarious reasons. The simple fact is he's under a legal obligation to do so.
A couple of people did challenge your thoughts on that Elon Musk interview. They argued that it would seem more logical for Elon to know nothing about NHI and its technology, because if he did know about it, why would he spend so much time, building SpaceX and all these rockets when there's clearly higher advanced technology out there?
It's a really good question, and I agree. I mean, I think it's absurd. It's funny, I've spoken to somebody in NASA at a very high level who said to me, Ross, if this is true, I have just wasted the last 50 years of my life. This is somebody who's worked in rocketry. And it's a legitimate question. How do we know, though, that Elon Musk hasn't been shared non-human technology? How do we know that SpaceX isn't being seeded with some of this technology? How do we know that there isn't a parallel program that's in operation that's using this technology? We don't. What I do know is that Elon Musk is very, very motivated to get to Mars. He's quite admirably concerned to make sure that humanity goes to the stars. And I think he would do that at all costs. And if you're somebody who is operating at the levels that he's operating, it's a really interesting question. If Elon's been read in to the program, as I understand he has President Trump? I don't think President Trump has been. I know President Trump's been made aware of certain things in certain briefings, but I don't think he's been fully read in to the full program, whereas I suspect Elon's much more aware of it than the president is. Why all the secrecy? Why? I mean, we just don't know. I mean, I would be speculating. I really think it's a lot of what's happening at the moment is we're all waiting to see what President Trump does. He's throwing bombs in different parts of the world on tariffs, including in my country, and causing all manner of concern around the world on Ukraine. And I think that's distracting him at the moment. We can only sincerely hope that at some stage he devotes his attention to the UAP issue, because that's what a lot of us want him to devote his attention to. And, it does puzzle me, just diverting for a little moment, if it is true that Trump is seriously considering being more open on the UAP issue, as he has pledged to do, why hasn't he done it earlier? And it could be simply, I was told recently, that he's just distracted by everything else he's got on his plate. And he's particularly got an economic agenda for America that he wants to advance before he goes any further. But nothing would forward an economic agenda for America more than bringing to light the technologies that I understand are represented by these alleged retrieved technologies. ZPE energy, zero-point energy, quantum energy from the quantum vacuum, propulsion systems, and indeed weapons systems that have never been seen before. If you're talking about maintaining American hegemony, American dominance right through into the 21st century, nothing would ensure that more than eventually revealing the existence of that weaponry. And I think that's probably driving Jay Stratton at the launch of the Age of Disclosure movie at Austin, Texas's South by Southwest Festival last Sunday. He acknowledged that one of the issues of concern is the weaponry that has been developed, that has been retrieved from these technologies. Jay being the former UAP task force boss for the Pentagon. I mean, just by the by, if people are skeptical about the whole claim that there is NHI engagement with this planet, about the idea of a crash retrieval program and a reverse engineering program, I draw your attention to a forthcoming movie that was previewed at Austin in Texas at the South by Southwest Festival last week, which is The Age of Disclosure, produced by Dan Farrar. It's quite an extraordinary film, even from what we're hearing in the news media reports about it. Very senior former and serving officials, including James Clapper, former DNI, Marco Rubio, current Secretary of State, they're all putting their names and their faces to claims that essentially there is a government cover-up underway, that the government is concealing what it knows on UAPs. And people within a group of about 34 very senior former and serving government officials are saying that there is this retrieval and reverse engineering program. And I think in that context, it's going to be very interesting to see what the president does once he sees that film. Because despite what the debunkers say, it is a game changer. It's very, very important that there are senior people, former and serving in government, who are willing to put their names to quite extraordinary claims, not only about the existence of NHI engaging with this planet, but that we are concealing in government the existence of a retrieval and reverse engineering program that has been underway for a very long time. What's going to happen with that? Is there going to be disclosure? That's anybody's guess.
All right, we have another viewer from YouTube asking, Ross, what are you working on now? Can we expect further revelations soon?
I'm exploring psionics. I'm exploring the connections between the UAP phenomenon, so-called, and human consciousness. It fascinates me. And that does include ideas of telepathy, I'm also very interested in detection systems. One of the things that I think we do need is good science, good, solid science. And I think one of the potential solutions is passive radar. And I commend to people the great work that's been done by Mitch Randall, who's done some extraordinary research into a potential passive radar system that could potentially be installed across an entire country like America using existing communication signals, for example, FM radio signals, and using multiple receivers, little SDR receivers, software-defined radio receivers, to essentially triangulate and show the position of objects, the speed of objects. And that would allow, I think, a detection system that could mean that we could do quite extraordinary things to assist in reasonably inexpensively detecting and following these objects. At the moment, we've got this absurd situation. I just want to point people's attention to this, where the official White House position still is, according to Caroline Leavitt, the White House spokeswoman, who said this at a press conference a few weeks ago, that the drone incursions over the United States, and indeed in other countries around the world, were FAA authorized drones being used for research purposes and other reasons. Now, that's the official White House position. You need to understand that it's a complex explanation, but in December, there was testimony given by Homeland Security, and I think also the FAA and the FBI, where it was admitted they had no idea where these objects were coming from, where these drones were coming from. And these are drones, so-called. That's the terminology the government likes to use. I'll call them objects, unknown objects. These are unknown objects that are being seen and monitored over extremely sensitive military facilities, over sensitive military air bases, Langley Air Force Base, Eglin Air Force Base, Malmstrom Air Force Base. And they're operating with apparent impunity over these bases, as well as over suburban areas like New York City and New Jersey. What's really interesting is this coming weekend, Roger Wicker, the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee of the United States Congress, is revealing to 60 Minutes CBS, and this is a big moment, very, very important moment. They've already teased this in one of their promotional teasers for the show. He admits that the Pentagon, according to his extraordinarily good sources, is still mystified by whatever these so-called drones are. So the White House is saying, we know what these drones are. They're FAA-authorized drones. The chairman of one of the most powerful military oversight committees in the Congress is saying, we have no bloody idea what these objects are, and I'm basing this on information I've been given by the Pentagon. So somebody is lying. Why? Why are they tying themselves up in knots with ridiculous lies about these drones? 5 minutes before I came on air here, I had somebody from California, Westlake, California, sending me extraordinary imagery of, again, what looks like a drone doing weird things in the sky over California from the previous night. Why is the government putting out false spin on these supposed drones? What's going on? I think the Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman Roger Wicker is perfectly right to ask 60 Minutes, why is there this inconsistency with what the FAA has supposedly said? And why can't FAA officials be called to the Congress by the Aviation Subcommittee and asked, did you really say this to the White House? Is what is being said by the White House true, or is the public being lied to? I think the public is being lied to. The big question is why? And this is what frustrates me, Alex, is that we've got a really interesting situation here where the media I once knew was trained to ask questions about that kind of inconsistency on the public record, where you have one arm of government, the most powerful arm, the White House, basically saying one thing, and then you have another arm of government saying another. Who's telling the truth, and why is there this inconsistency? These drone incursions are an absolutely fundamental question, and the public has been played on these drones. We don't know if they're anomalous or not, but something is buzzing, not only the continental United States, but countries all over the world, large objects that are flashing non-regulatory lights that appear to look like drones, but are they really?
All right, we have one final question from Jasper on YouTube. He would like to know if you will be publishing a new book, a follow-up of In Plain Sight.
Oh God, my publisher is asking me this as well because they've seen how many people are interested in the whole subject of UAPs. The publishing industry, thanks to people like Lou Elizondo with his book Imminent and Jay Stratton with whatever his new book's going to be called, all of a sudden the publishing industry is waking up to the fact that people really do want to hear about UAPs and they're not putting up with the taboo and the stigma. I can tell you that as an author, writing a book is an extremely thankless task. It's like having a baby, I'm told. You have to forget about the pain of delivery before you do another one. I'm certainly thinking about it. There's plenty of content. One of the problems, frankly, I'll tell you, with writing a book these days is people steal the copyright. I mean, I'll spend 2 years writing a book, and then some bastard will basically copy it, put it up on archive.org or whatever it's called, and they've essentially stolen my copyright. And then I'm unpaid for all the work that I've done to write that book. And people forget that. It's very easy to download a book. And a lot of friends of mine who are working in the music business, a lot of fellow authors, they're kind of giving up and going, well, what's the point? What's the point of writing books when things are so easily digitally stolen these days? I am inclined to do another book. My publisher was on at me to do a new edition of In Plain Sight, but I think we've moved on. I do think that there's now, especially with this area of human consciousness, the idea that this is opening us up into areas like telepathy, like the psionic issue. I'm fascinated by the idea that intrinsic to this whole mystery is the human mind, and the fact that whatever the phenomenon is, it certainly seems interested in humans who have these psionic abilities. And I've seen it for myself. Once you've seen it, it's very hard to ignore it. There does appear to be some aspect of the human brain that can connect with whatever this phenomenon is. And I think sometimes it's too simplistic to think of it as a technology. Maybe it's not. That's what I'm interested in exploring for my next book, God forbid.
Wonderful. Well, that's all our questions for today. I do want to remind people that I am reading the comments. So if they have any questions that they would like to ask, please throw them in there and I'll see if we can get them answered.
No problem. Thanks very much, Alex. Great to work with you. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And please don't forget to click that red subscribe button to ensure you get more of NewsNation's unbiased and fact-driven news coverage.